Now let me introduce you, the one and only Stefan Zweifel. I don't know if you know him, but you should definitely follow him on Twitter. He got pretty good blog posts about experience he's doing, like stuff when he's switching like his stack. It's always good to read what are the pros and cons. And it's like he's doing a lot of open source stuff as well. Like, I'm not sure if you use the automatically commit from GitHub Actions. That's actually, Stefan wrote that. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, and much more stuff I think he's gonna show us. And I'm really proud that he's today here, gonna do a talk for us. And yeah, Stefan, it's your show.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Ruslan, for this nice intro. Yeah, and thank you for organizing this meetup. It's really cool that we have this little community here in Switzerland, all about Laravel. And I'm happy to speak here in front of all of you. I'm a bit of a fast talker, as you already noticed, but I try to keep it slow. But first, a couple of words about me. Again, I'm Stefan Zweifel. I'm a full stack developer, and I've been working with Laravel for the past 8 years or so. I'm on Twitter, have a blog, and as Ruslan mentioned, I write about Laravel, my side projects, or some favorite apps I use. But today is about Laravel LiveWire, so let's get started. What is LiveWire? First, a quick summary for those who haven't heard of it before. On its website, Laravel LiveWire, I will just call it LiveWire from now on. It's such a Zungenbrecher. Explains itself like this. A full-stack framework for Laravel that makes building dynamic interfaces simple without leaving the comfort of Laravel. Nice words. But what does it exactly mean? You're probably asking yourself right now. I would describe LiveWire as a tool that tries to bring the dynamicness of JavaScript frameworks like Vue.js, React, Svelte, or anything else to Laravel. Basically, you can create a dynamic UI, like a real-time search of a products table, or a to-do app, or a drag-and-drop thing, without writing any JavaScript at all. LiveWire will take care of the JavaScript part, while you write PHP and Blade. Let's switch to a code example. Let's build a very, very simple application, or component, as LiveWire calls them, where a click on a button increments a counter. This is the PHP class you have to write for this. First, we extend the components, LiveWire component. Then we have a public property called counter with a start value of 0, an increment method that increments the counter, and a render method that returns a Blade template of the template of our component. And the template just looks like this. There is a heading where we echo out the counter and a button with a wire::click attribute with the increment value. And you might already see where this is going. Wire::click is LiveWire syntax to tell LiveWire what should happen if you click the button. And in this case, increment should be executed. So let's see this in action. I've prepared a little demo. So this is basically the same, just a bit of styling. And here is the mouse. So if I click the button, the counter increments. Very simple, very easy. And as I mentioned, this is a public property currently. This is stored in a public property. So if I reload the page, the state is gone. And if we open the network tab, I can show you how this actually works. If I click the button again, you can see that HTTP requests are made to the server. And inside HTTP requests, this is the response. LiveWire sends some hashes and checksums with it to make sure that your browser and this site sends the data and not something else, so it's a bit more secure. And the response from LiveWire itself is just some HTML gibberish, and LiveWire will just patch this into the DOM and make it all work. So the counter increments. Yeah. That's cool. Very, very simple. But another feature you might not. Oops, where's the slides? Okay. Another feature you might need is showing and hiding elements based on the input of a user. And this you can simply achieve with the if directive you might already know from Blade. In this example, when the button is clicked, a toggle method runs, this one here, and the method simply changes between true and false. And depending on the value, we show a string or a GIF. And the component class on the other side, again, has a public property with a Boolean type int and the toggle method that just changes the value. And again, a little demo for this too. This is the demo, just a GIF, nothing to see here. But if I click the button, it switches to the text. Very simple, but I think you get the gist. OK. Next, data binding. If you used JavaScript frameworks like Vue.js or React before, or specifically in Vue.js, you might already know vmodel, the vmodel syntax. And with vmodel, you can bind a JavaScript variable to an input element. When a user enters something into the input element, Vue knows about this, and you can do something with it. Yes. And the same concept exists in LiveWire 2 with wire model. Here, we add wire model to an input and add a search property to it, or a search key. And below, we echo out the value. And our component class just looks like this, just a public property, and that's all there is to do. And with this, you can basically build a real-time search of a product table or something else. And that's pretty cool. You don't have to write any JavaScript, just a wire model and a public property, and that's it. And again, I built a little demo for this. Yay, demo time. With 4 mountains from Switzerland and a search input. And I can just simply type something in here, like the yeah, page expired. And it searches the values. Pretty easy and very, very not JavaScript heavy for me. I really like PHP, so this is really cool for me. I can build something like this, which is very dynamic without writing any API endpoints or JavaScript. Very cool. And all of this works with, or the example previously was an Eloquent query. And this is the code behind this. It's a little bit smaller, probably. But we only added a new method here, get available mountains property, which appends a where clause to the query if the search field or the search input is filled. And we just add a like query or condition to the query, and that's basically it. Very easy. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that every key type in the input field makes an HTTP request to the server. That's probably something you have to keep in mind if you have a very popular page, I don't know, where many people are clicking and searching. You could potentially DDoS your own server and take the whole service down. But luckily, LiveWire has you covered with data binding modifiers. First, there is the debounce modifier. By default, LiveWire already waits 150 milliseconds between each HTTP request. But you can override this by just appending debounce and the value of milliseconds to wait between each HTTP request. And another modifier is called lazy, which I really like, because maybe I'm lazy too, man, sometimes. Then LiveWire waits for a change event that can be triggered by the input element, the change HTML event. And that's pretty cool. So the user has to stop typing, and then the request is made. And in this case, the search is applied. Again, I made a little demo for this with all 3 examples. So this is the default with 150 milliseconds. If I type very slowly here, you can see that state is updated here below. And if I go to the next and type very slowly, it takes a second to update. And this is the lazy version, which I really like. I can type and type and type and wait, and nothing happens. But if I click or tap out, the state is updated. Okay, data binding is cool. What's even cooler, what you can't see, is model binding. All of this works with models too, so you can just connect an input element to a Laravel model. To make this work, you have to type in the model to the property, in this case mountain. Then we added a rules property with mountain name and mountain height. We use the dots notation here to target the specific columns. In this example, the rules probably don't make sense. The height is a string and has a max of 500. I just copied some code. Sorry for that. And we have a save method that validates the input. This is a feature from LiveWire itself. You don't have to write or add anything on your own. And if the validation passes, the mountain is saved, the model is saved. And if something fails, the code isn't executed, and LiveWire will return the validation error messages back to the front end, and you can display them next to your input fields. That's very cool. One thing to note but I'm not really sure anymore, that the rules property is required for this all to work. You can't just type in the mountain model and leave out the rules property and then add this mountain save. I'm pretty sure LiveWire uses the rules property in its internals to make all of this work. It does, right? Okay. Whew. Just yesterday evening, I thought, okay, is it really that? Or our blade template looks like this. We added 2 input fields, wire, and wired them up with wire model. Again, we added a dot syntax to target the specific columns. And again, there is a bug in the screenshot. This is title and not name, sorry. And we have a wire submit attribute that's new on the form element. And as you can imagine, it tells LiveWire what should happen if you submit the form. And the prevent modifier here prevents the site from being reloaded, which is the default behavior of HTML forms. And with save, we tell LiveWire what should happen. So the save method in our component should be executed. So yeah, let me drink a bit of water.
We can ditch JavaScript then.
Yes, basically yes. You don't have to write any JavaScript at all. Okay, this all works for more collections too. By just adding an asterisk to the rules property, this all works with collections too. In this example, we tell LiveWire there are posts, and this is an array, and each post contains a title and a content. And in this mount method, which I haven't talked about yet, but you can imagine it's like a constructor of the LiveWire component, we attach the posts from the logged in user to the posts property. And in the save method, we loop over all these posts and save each individual one. And the template on the other side had similar changes. We loop over the posts, again, use dot syntax and the index to wire everything up. The new thing here is the wire key attribute here, which is required often when you do loops, for each loops or for loops, to help LiveWire keep track of DOM changes. If everything has the same name, LiveWire doesn't know how to replace stuff, and usually LiveWire will tell you this with a warning. If you miss this, hey, you have to do something here. Add a wire key that's unique. Next, model binding with relationships. This also works. Another quick example, you can edit, in this example, you can edit the title of a user's posts. Not really a cool example, I think, but it gets the point across. Again, asterisks, user posts. Posts is a relationship of user. And here we use higher order collections to save each post on the user. Very readable. And in the template, again, we loop over everything and wire everything up. And this is truly magical stuff, I think, personally. With data binding support for models and relationships, you can build truly complex and dynamic UIs without writing any JavaScript yourself. And let me show you a project I've been working on earlier this year that uses all the previously mentioned features. Woo. I need to loop this because it's very short. No, not full screen. What you can see here is a project from work. It's an app that manages ad campaigns from Facebook for us. And users can create rules to automatically pause ad campaigns. And there are conditions and actions, and conditions and actions are relationships on the rule model. And on the right side is a live preview of the affected campaigns. So now it's almost over. Here is a big list of campaigns. I add some conditions, and the list is updated automatically.
Really pausing all of the employers' ad campaigns.
Yeah.
This boss is like, what's going on?
Yeah, could happen.
It's for a video, don't
Yeah. It's just a demo. Don't worry. And all of this is written with LiveWire. Not a single JavaScript line has been added here. Adding a condition, all this stuff, adding stuff to an array. I've done this hundreds of times in JavaScript, and it's every time a bit of a hassle. And with LiveWire, it's really easy. You just add something to an array, probably the same in JavaScript. But in this case, I really liked it because I didn't have to think about an API endpoint for this part. Like, what's the name of the API endpoint? Do I authenticate it with it? How do I document this? What's the response? Just IDs or the entire object? Here it's just a method, again, a computer property I haven't mentioned yet, which just returns the ad campaigns. I didn't have to think about recompiling my assets in JavaScript. Maybe I would have to switch between JavaScript and PHP and back and forth. Not really cool. Yeah, and the only issue I haven't solved here is editing a rule. I couldn't reuse the same components for editing all of this, but that's not too much of a problem in this example. Users can just pause a rule or delete a rule. That's my solution for this problem. Okay. Next, events. Like JavaScript frameworks, LiveWire has an event bus. This allows you to share data between 2 or more LiveWire components on the same page. This is the syntax for this. There is an emit method, where the first argument is the name and the second is the data you send with the event. And to listen to an event, you add a listener's property to a component class. And the key is the name of the event and the value, the method that should be executed. And one recent example I can give for events is from the same application from before. Again, a little video. Where's the mouse? Again, very simple. We just display a notification when a user clicks on a button. Again, we pause Facebook ad campaigns in this app. And Facebook has its weird behavior sometimes that their API fails for unknown reason. And we wanted to make sure to communicate to the user, hey, the action you just took, activate or pause, actually happened. So this notification is only displayed if the response was successful from Facebook. And this is just a standalone notification component which renders the notifications. And all the LiveWire components, like this button here, for example, just emits a notification event with the data, and that's all there is. But I have to confess, this is the only part where I had to write 3 lines of JavaScript to hide the notification after 3 or 4 seconds. I don't know how long it is. And another nice feature is that everything is testable with PHP unit. Each LiveWire component can be tested, which is really cool. And this is how the syntax looks like. The LiveWire facade gives us a test method where we pass the name of the component. And then we just trigger methods with call increment and assert, in this example, that the counter increments by 1 every time increment is executed. If I would have written this component in JavaScript, I would have used a JavaScript testing framework like Jest or Playwright or what's out there, Cypress. And this is just another tool you have to teach and maintain and learn. And by using LiveWire, you can just use Laravel tools. You have access to all the cool stuff like migrations, seeders, parallel testing, so much stuff. So yeah, that's testing. Okay. I barely scratched the surface what LiveWire has to offer. So here are just some keywords or features I haven't talked about. DD support, or maybe also array support probably. There are inline components, full-page components, computed properties. That's what we used for the mountain search, validation and error messages, file uploads. You can upload files, and LiveWire handles this all for you. Query strings, which is really cool, where the state of a property is stored in the browser's URL. We use this regularly in search and filter UIs, so another user can just copy and paste the URL somewhere in Slack and tell you, hey, look at this. This doesn't work, and it's really cool. First-party authorization support for Laravel policies, if you use them. Loading state detection. If you click something in LiveWire, it knows about this, and you can show a loading spinner, for example. Pooling to automatically fetch data every X seconds here, every 3 seconds, for example. Offline state detection. If you lose internet access or network access, you can tell your users about this. And integration with JavaScript libraries like Alpine.js, Laravel Echo, or anything else. It just works, basically. And to round things off, I'd like to show what's possible with LiveWire in another application of mine. 8 years ago, I started a project called Screenly, and it's an app that generates screenshots or PDFs of a website or your own HTML code. And to showcase all those features, I build a playground page. The user can click around and enable things, and that's all written in LiveWire. It's a bit small, probably, but that's the page. On the left side, you can see all the settings. You can tell Screenly, not LiveWire, which output method should be used. Should it be a JPEG screenshot, a PDF, or rendered HTML? The source, an URL or HTML code, and some settings. And on the right side, here will be the preview, and this is the API payload you can send to the application. So the playground also helps you build up the API payload to use the service. And if I click Run Playground, you can see the loading spinner here. This is the loading detection. And here's the preview. And why is this good? As I mentioned, this is basically an API application. There is not much to it. There's just this playground and a dashboard, and that's it. And the app itself has like 40 different settings. You can tell it over the API. And there are a lot of validation rules. I can even show you the source code of this. So this is the code with all the validation rules for each setting. So in clip width, there is a required if all other clip parameters are present. And with LiveWire, I could just reuse this code and didn't have to write this in JavaScript, so I could save a lot of time. It's just a side project, so I don't make money with this, so I didn't want to spend more time with it. Yeah, that's basically it. We use validation rules. Yeah. So if you ever need to create a screenshot of a website or generate invoice PDFs or open graph images, give it a try. Back to the slides.
So it's basically browser shop as a service?
Yes, exactly. I even have a watch on the repo. Every time a new feature is coming, I have to switch to this project and add it. And what's coming in LiveWire v3 a couple of weeks ago at Laracon autumn, summer, I don't know. Version 3 has been announced. It will probably not release until 2023, but these are some of the upcoming features mentioned. There are hot reloading without breaking the component state. So if you edit a LiveWire component, it automatically updates in the browser without losing the states. You don't have to retype things or add things or all this stuff. Then you can write JavaScript functions in PHP, which sounds a bit crazy. But yeah, that's LiveWire. Then locked properties that can't be updated from the front end. It's cool. I don't have a use case for this. Lazy loading LiveWire components, also cool. Teleport directive, which will be useful if you have model windows. so they don't interact or conflict with the set indexes of other components. Then a wire navigate attribute, which gives an app like an SPA feeling, so you don't have to hard reload between each page navigation. And the new persist directive that persists parts of the app between page reloads with this wire navigation attribute, which is really cool if you have like an audio player which should keep running while the user navigates your app. So yeah, okay, I'm almost done. Before I go, I would like to mention some cool projects and people who are building stuff with LiveWire. First, there's Fido Hermans. Oh no, videos aren't playing. He's a Dutch developer building a platform called Unlock to sell and distribute software. And everything there is built with LiveWire, and he uses lots of model windows and slide overs and real-time stuff. And he extracted some LiveWire components and made them public. That's the URL. There is a model one where you can build modals and child modals which depend on each other, which is really cool if you have a need for this. And a Spotlight package. That's like a, whoops. No, you don't see it. Like Spotlight on macOS, or I think Windows has something similar, where you can search the entire application or trigger actions just from a command line, like UI. Next is Filament PHP. It's a collection of tools that allows you to rapidly build apps and admin panels using Laravel and LiveWire. And then I can highly recommend it. I'm currently adding an admin panel to an internal app where we neglected adding one 3 years ago. And it's truly a joy using it. I think in 1 or 2 hours, I had a first prototype which filled all the models and managed all the models. It's really cool.
It's awesome. And it's completely free.
Yes, that's the best part. It's free and very active in development. They already announced a v3, which can also be used to build entire applications. This is their default UI. And v3, you can build completely different UIs and your own apps, all with the same syntax. It's pretty cool. Okay, that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. I hope I could spark some interest in LiveWire and you use it in your next project or in existing ones. And if you have any questions, let me know, or hit me up on Twitter, or send me an email. Thanks. Yoo-hoo. Any questions?
Yeah, I got one. Are there any plans when LiveWire 3 is released? Is there any rumors when it will come out?
I don't know.
No.
I think he's trying to time it to be with Laravel 10.
So January, February, so.
I think he's depending on some of the breaking changes there to facilitate some of what he wants to do. He did that with his last release.